is homework review, which is looking great. Just pull up the stats here on Canvas. I am seeing for this section 11 attempts, but of those 11 attempts, looks like everyone got pretty much every single question right, and hopefully you used your multiple attempts if you got anything wrong. Big takeaways from this, again, are just the general functions, which we're going to review today in class, why we have blood circulating around our bodies, why we need a heart to do that, and also how exactly, like what is it in our blood cells, specifically the protein hemoglobin, that allows them to carry oxygen collected from the air, right? That's the big thing. That's how we interact with the atmosphere. So any questions or comments on that homework? Clarence?
Okay, so I like that little, they had those little box things that you could read about, and one of them was about leukemia, and I had leukemia as a baby, and I never, ever understood what it was. I mean, like, I understood it was cancer, obviously, but like, I never understood like the actual science behind it, and then I figured it out. So, feeling
Nice.
accomplished today.
All right. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Leukemia is like a blood cancer, right?
Yeah, it's where the bone marrow is like different, so it makes it so there's like it overproduces red blood cells.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's one of the big takeaways, at least for me. I think a very common misconception about blood is people think blood cells make more blood cells. Blood comes from your bone marrow, so which is why a lot of people have to get bone marrow transplants, that kind of thing, to treat things like that. So anyway, that's awesome. Any other comments or questions? Alrighty, I want to take a quick moment to finish up our climate change slides, which we didn't quite get through, and I would like to try to wrap up that unit before we then delve into more biology. Can I get a quick verbal confirmation? Everyone's seeing the graph on screen?
Yep.
I can see it.
All right. Pretty confident this is where we left off. So this is kind of what's on everybody's minds right now, and what you hear about a lot in the news with climate change is that, notice again, they're just overlaying in blue carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, and in red global average temperatures. And what I'm hoping you can see is that, I mean, they've clearly adjusted the scales here so that they line up well, but there's definitely a pattern, right? And so here's the thing: this is where we are today at 400 parts per million. So what's temperature going to do? Is temperature also going to spike that high? Because that would be pretty intense to see a 15-degree Fahrenheit difference in temperatures in different parts of our planet. But we are starting to see some of that. Again, there are some deniers out there, right, who are saying that the chief argument is that this is not causation, this is just correlation, right? That these two things are linked, but the one is not specifically causing the other. And so here's kind of a silly example. You can actually, again, by adjusting these scales, you could compare something like US spending on science versus suicides by hanging. And clearly there's a very clear correlation here. So what's going on with that? Again, these two things have nothing to do with each other. It's just happenstance and the way that you set up the graph. However, I would argue that in terms of climate change, there's a lot of scientific evidence about the behavior of molecules like CO2 and methane, CH4, that they can trap solar radiation, and levels of CO2 are increasing in the atmosphere. We're also seeing changes in temperature on our planet. It's not even, though. You can see that, especially over the Pacific, there hasn't been that much of a change, or at least there's actually been a decrease. But again, it's these northern regions where we're starting to see ice caps melt, permafrost in the ground is melting. That's not a good situation. We're seeing these extreme weather patterns. So again, you guys did that survey and we analyzed the data. I'm kind of hoping that was informative, and it was kind of interesting to see again that transportation was definitely the #1 source of carbon for everybody across the board, and personal purchases were very, very low. So we read that CNN article about what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And so if you're motivated by this, or you want to try to save the planet, recycling more can always help. Going vegetarian, even for short periods of time, just eating less meat in general. Buying an electric car or a hybrid car when you can, when it comes to that point in your life. The more extreme one up here is having one fewer child. Again, not something that a lot of people are willing to do or entertain, but that by far has the biggest impact on your overall carbon footprint. And again, we talked about refrigerators. So the conclusion of that CNN article was that the best thing you can do is make sure you recycle your refrigerators. And that's because refrigerators and air conditioners used to operate using these chemicals in fluid form really, really bad for the atmosphere. They're actually depleting the ozone layer. They were banned in 1987, but it's not like we got rid of our refrigerators or our air conditioners. They just replaced these chemicals. So these were banned, but they just replaced them with something that was different and was deemed safer, which are called hydrofluorocarbons. And while they are technically not depleting the ozone layer, they are 10 times more potent at capturing solar radiation than carbon dioxide. And so release of this into the atmosphere is not a good situation in terms of global warming. And again, so this is just what we need to avoid is refrigerators being dumped, leaking their fluids so that these hydrofluorocarbons seep into the atmosphere and start capturing more solar radiation. We need to recycle these fluids in a proper way so that they don't end up in the air. Final thing I want to talk about is just, and I do this any opportunity I can, is when I got out of college, I joined an organization called the Peace Corps. It's a volunteer program overseas. You spend 2 years in a foreign country and working in education, agriculture, whatever. I was an education volunteer. I taught in a rural village school in Africa. So I lived for 3 years actually, from 2008 to 2011, right here in this tiny, tiny country in West Africa called the Gambia. I was posted right there, about as far up country as you can get. Even Gambians consider that to be the middle of nowhere. Um, and I lived in just a rural village. I taught in a rural school. And the reason I want to share this is because this is probably the point in my life where I had the lowest carbon footprint that I've ever had. So this is where I lived for 2 years. This is just a thatch roof hut. There's no electricity, no running water, no power lines. So automatically, if you think about me filling out that survey when I was doing this, huge savings on a lot of this stuff. The only source of electricity I have is a solar panel that I had right there on my roof, and I had a little wire that went down into my hut, and I had a car battery that it would recharge through the solar panel, and I could use that to charge a tiny cell phone and an iPod that I had for music. But that was pretty much it. There's no gas stoves, right? No methane being released or anything like that. It was all just burning little pieces of wood. That's not me. That's a friend of mine who I was in training with. But that's just how cooking was done. Water, again, was not pumped anywhere using electricity. There's no dams or anything like that. We just had these little ground wells. You had to haul up and down on that little lever there, and it would pump out small amounts of water that you would carry back to your hut. These were refrigerators, basically. These are clay pots. We talked about evaporative cooling. So you put water in a clay pot, the water would slowly seep out. So it was almost like the pot was sweating, and that would cool down the water on the inside. So it wouldn't be ice cold, but it would be cooler than the air outside. But again, no chemicals, no hydrofluorocarbons, nothing like that there. Water for like bathing and stuff like that was an open well. So this I would not drink because it was open. So you'd get like chickens would fall down there and die, and bats, and it was pretty gross. But you could at least bathe yourself in that. I would not drink it. But again, you'd have to haul a bucket out here, collect it, and haul it back to your hut. Transportation was available, but they had these old vans and trucks that were called gele geles. They were really unreliable. I was already in one car accident while I was there. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to ride my bike everywhere. And so this is how I got around. So again, I wasn't riding in vehicles or driving vehicles, huge reduction in my carbon footprint. I just load up tons and tons of stuff. I had everything on my back. And anyway, it's crazy to think how much. That's the one thing Peace Corps gave us, was these nice Trek bikes that were pretty tough. Farming. So again, all the food I ate was locally grown. A lot of corn and what they called koos, which was essentially, it's like what we feed cows. It was sorghum. But again, it was all grown right outside the village that I was in. So nothing was shipped in from very far, except for things like rice and stuff that might have come from like United Arab Emirates. Fruit was also grown locally. So mangoes were a big one in season. These are called baobab fruits. Does anyone know what that is right there? Has anyone seen that before? That, believe it or not, is a cashew fruit. Anyone a fan of cashews and cashew nuts? So the cashew nut is inside that little thing there. But a lot of people don't realize that cashews actually grow on a fruit. They're not mass produced, right? They get thrown away. They're very acidic. But that was a cashew fruit. I actually like those a lot. And there's a lot of gardening, so a lot of vegetables and stuff I actually ended up growing or would buy in local markets. So anyway, I just like to share that because I think my carbon footprint, I didn't do the calculator back then. And I'm sure the flights getting me to and from Africa would definitely have added a lot to it. But overall, I think that's probably the lowest carbon footprint I've ever had in my life. So questions and comments on that? If you're curious about serving overseas, you should definitely consider the Peace Corps. You just need a college degree. So, all right. Well, then I'm going to use that to sort of wrap up climate change stuff for now, and let's move into a little bit of biology. You read about the circulatory system. You're going to do another reading about that for homework today. But to start us off on the tasks to complete list, I'd like you to look at step number 4, fun facts about the human body. There's a Google form there. It's anonymous, so don't worry about right or wrong answers. But go ahead and open that up and answer I think there's 4 or 5 questions on there that I'd like you to tackle. So I'm just going to time for 5 minutes to work on the fun facts about the human body Google form. And we'll come back together once it looks like everyone's completed it. Let me know if you need help. All right, first question related to assuming equal weights, human bones are 4 times stronger than what? Correct answer is actually concrete, which is crazy to think. And again, a lot of people hear this and think, well, wait, then why, when I fall on concrete, do my bones break and the concrete doesn't break? And again, that's the important thing is assuming equal weights, right? If your skeleton currently was made out of concrete, you would be much, much heavier. So bones are very light, but they're very, very strong. How much blood will you produce in a lifetime? Enough to fill 2 swimming pools. So try not to picture yourself swimming in a swimming pool of your own saliva, but that is a whole lot. You can eat zinc because your stomach acid is strong enough to digest it. As far as I know, you can actually digest iron and iron nails as well. And zinc and iron are actually metals that we need in our diets because you need them in your body. And how many gallons of blood does the heart pump every day? It is 2,000 gallons. Again, it's not like you have 2,000 gallons of blood in your body. It's just cycling constantly. So if you look at how many beats and the volume per beat, it adds up to about that much. Pretty incredible. Any questions or comments on that? Lots of cool stuff out there. So then next is a ed puzzle that I put together to review circulation in the circulatory system. It's a lesson by me with a couple questions. Specifically, it is on tasks to complete step number 5. It's 13 minutes long with 5 questions. As usual, there's an alternative Google form if you can't get ed puzzle to work. So I'm going to time for 20 minutes to work on this. It probably won't take 20 minutes to get through it. But once it looks like most people have it done, we'll come back together to review. If you finish early, you are welcome to move on to the next task, which is a drawing that you're going to be making, a summary of the circulatory system. If you click on that, step number 6, it takes you here where I've got instructions. More importantly, if you click on that link, it'll show you an image. Let me share my screen here really quick. Sorry about that. Here's an image of what you're going to be drawing in your notebooks, and preferably with 2 different colors. If you have red and blue, great. If you don't have red and blue, you can still use 2 different colors. But anyway, work on that if you have time. So 20 minutes to work on the ed puzzle. Go for it. Let me know if you need help. Pretty amazing. All right, so then I know this can be confusing and intimidating. And so to try to keep it simple, if you haven't started already, you should make a drawing in your notebook. So your notebook's good. If you have a blank piece of paper, you can use that too and then stick it into your notebook. But I've got instructions on that last tasks to complete list. Tasks summary of the circulation. If you click on the circulation's summary drawing, it'll take you an assignment that looks like that. And again, you can either follow these instructions that I listed here or just open up that example image. This is what you want to draw. And so it might not look that neat, but I think this is a nice little simplistic look at just how blood moves from the heart to the lungs to the heart to the body to the heart, with labeling all those things. So give you the remainder of time to work on that. Let me know if you need help or have questions. Yeah.
Mr. I don't really have color pencils currently.
Okay. Yeah. If you don't have anything, then just use one color. But if you have even just like green and red or something like that, or like it doesn't have to be red and blue. But yeah, but that's fine. If you don't have different colors, then you can just use one. That's fine. I won't dock any points for that.